In this recording, we're going to assess sociological contributions to an understanding of state crime. State crime can be defined as illegal activities carried out by some aspects of the state, such as the armed forces, secret services, and prison services on behalf of governments and political leaders in order to further state interests. Most criminologists accept that crimes committed by states across the world would include genocide and ethnic cleansing, but what is defined as crime or violence is a social construct. And also, some sociologists take a much broader stance of what constitutes a state crime. Sociologists have made us aware of the fact that the powerful can impose their definition as to what counts as crime in society, so what's defined as crime is an ideological construct. For example, governments have the power to define killing as a problem if it is done by a member of the public, but it is justified if a police or a soldier kills someone. You can use the example of the Holocaust, which has been seen as a war crime, but dropping the atomic bomb on the Japanese city was seen as necessary. Marxists would argue that the crimes of the powerful mean that the ruling class have the ability to discriminate themselves and get away with state crimes through selective law enforcement. However, in the case of dropping the atomic bomb, it was the victors rather than the working class that had the power to decide what was right and what was wrong. Stan Cohen believes that human rights and state crimes are increasingly central to criminology because of the growing international human rights movement and increased focus on victims. He argues that it's difficult to find out the true extent of state crime because governments either deny their actions or attempt to justify their actions in an attempt to cover up their illegal nature. For instance, if a denial of a massacre doesn't work, the state will simply suggest that it was collateral damage or that it was necessary to protect national security. Perpetrators of crime on behalf of the state don't see themselves as criminal because they use techniques of neutralization to deny or justify crimes against people. For instance, they deny their victims by labeling them terrorists or extremists. They deny the injury or damage by suggesting that the other side started it, and they deny responsibility by saying they were simply obeying orders or doing their duty. These perpetrators often appeal to a higher cause, for instance the defense of the free world, to legitimize their actions and appear less criminal. Clement and Hamilton believe that many state crimes are crimes of obedience, as people commit them because they have been socialized into believing that it is their duty to obey, and that their behavior is acceptable and necessary rather than criminal, because the enemy are criminals to which the normal behavior of rules of morality don't apply. State crime is a problematic term because there are different opinions as to what constitutes a state crime. McLaughlin believed that the censorship of the media and institutional racism should be classified as state crimes, whereas Schwenzinger believed that the definitions of state crime should be extended to include the violation of people's human rights. He suggests that any violation of people's human rights should be defined as illegal and therefore criminal. However, the problem with Schwenzinger is that the definition of human rights is possibly too broad because he suggests that if some groups are denied the same opportunities as the majority of the population on the basis of racism, sexism, and homophobia, or if they are economically exploited, then the unequal conditions that result of crimes against human crimes. Also, Stan Cohen believes that genocide and torture are clearly crimes, but economic exploitation is not criminal, even though it's seen as morally unacceptable. There is not enough agreement as to what constitutes as human rights. For instance, most people accept that freedom should be a human right, but not everyone would agree that freedom from poverty should be a right. Therefore, the measurement of state crime is extremely difficult. So overall, the measurement of state crime is difficult because there are different definitions of state crime, so it would be hard to measure state crime without an agreed definition. Also, states can cover up their activities, and a lot of what they do is secretive, as there is an ideological construct aspect of state crime. The so-called criminality of the state crime may be outweighed by the benefits. For instance, is it worth going to the extremes like America has to defeat terrorism, as Bush's war on terror can be used an example of that? So in conclusion, state crime is useful in making us aware of crimes other than the traditional crimes, such as street crime, and it's shown us that how state crime may be possibly on the rise. However, concepts such as green crime, which can be committed by the state, are difficult to measure as no laws are technically broken. For example, if the state allows transnational corporations to pollute the environment, then the state may be putting tax revenue and jobs before the overall long-term welfare of its citizens, and also there is clearly much disagreement over what actually constitutes a state crime.